Hello and welcome to a new episode of Her Voice. A few weeks ago, the world witnessed the devastating attacks that took place in central Paris, killing around 130 people and injuring many others. Following the attack, anti-Muslim hate crime has actually risen by 300% in the UK, and the majority of the victims were women and girls. The perpetrators are mainly white men and teenage boys, and the terrorist attack in Paris has been cited by a new report as a reason for the increase. In today's show, we will be speaking to a panel of experts about the Islamophobia that has spread amongst many communities in the UK and how women wearing the scarf are being targeted following a terrorist attack or event that takes place around the world. Why are women an easy target? And has the public sentiment changed towards them? Should Muslims carry the dual burden of not only fearing a terror attack, but also the threat from people who feel they have the right to attack Muslims in response to Paris? These are just a few questions that we will be asking our guests in today's show. With me in the studio, I have Dr. Rania Hafez, founder and director at Muslim Women Education and senior lecturer at the University of Greenwich, and Muddiman, creative education consultant. Also joining us on Skype, I have Mr. Mark Attwood, founder and chief strategist at Attwood Global Limited. But let's watch the report that highlights this major problem, and then we will come back to our guests.
Muslims, whether they've been in the UK for generations or for just a few years, whether they're white or South Asian or of Arab descent, whether they're practicing or lapsed or somewhere in between, are often considered as a mass, and mostly in relation to terrorism. Hate crimes against Muslims in the United Kingdom have jumped nearly 275% since the November 13th Paris attacks. At least 115 anti-Muslim hate incidents occurred in the UK within 8 days of the attacks, for which the Islamic State group claimed responsibility, according to data collected from the UK-based monitoring group Tel Mama. The figure compares to just 42 incidents during the same period last year. The vast majority of the incidents were perpetrated against Muslim women between the ages of 14 and 45. The report also found that most of the perpetrators were young white men between 15 and 35. Women wearing the hijab are physically attacked, and this is the reality for thousands of Muslim women living in Britain. They are the targets for racism purely because of their clothing, their demeanour and their gender. Islamophobic attacks have been on the rise ever since 9/11, but it's mostly women who are paying the price. According to Tel Mama's reports, many of the victims have suggested that no one came to their assistance or even consoled them, meaning that they felt victimized, embarrassed, alone and angry about what had taken place against them. A large number of the reported attacks occurred in public, such as on buses and trains. 34 victims were women wearing the hijab, and 8 of the incidents involved young children. Due to the recent political climate, some women are contemplating removing their hijabs as added protection, and in fear of their own and their family's safety. Should this be the choice for all women to unveil, or is it also a sign of the bigotry and prejudice that now exists?
Welcome to the show, Rania and Anne. Rania, a question that I always wanted to ask. Is ISIS Islamic or is it not?
Clearly it is not, although it thinks it is. And it has tried to justify some of its heinous, barbaric action by completely misquoting certain passages from the Quran, the Hadith, and the history. But all scholars have unanimously declared that none of the behavior can be in any way deemed Islamic.
Right.
But we have to appreciate that they claim to be.
Yes.
So we have to have this argument with them to say, no, you're not.
Right, okay. Well, do you think that Muslims should push back against extremism more than they have ever been because of obviously the situation that's actually happening around the world at the moment?
I think the issue is to how do we define extremism. The problem in Britain, I'm going to talk about Britain in particular, because there has been a very woolly, not even a definition, but a kind of branded about the term extremism. People are starting to take what is normal Muslim behavior as extremist. For instance, when a woman is wearing hijab and then maybe she decides to wear niqab and cover her face, suddenly she's extremist.
extremism.
We have all now starting to question and problematize what would be completely normal behavior, like a young man growing a beard. So I think it depends what we mean by extremism. If extremism is about advocating hatred of other people and advocating harming other people, then obviously there's also criminal, and we should all push against it. Not just Muslims, but all of us should be working together against it.
Right. Okay. And as a British citizen and educationist, has your perception of Islam changed since the last terror attacks that took place in Paris, and if so, why?
Yes, it's definitely changed, and it's become a lot more sympathetic rather than hostile, because I do know one woman that was spat at who is a Muslim lady, and my question is not how does she feel, but how does the person feel that did it?
Right.
And I think it's fostering lots of fear, lots of hate, and I'm becoming a lot more compassionate to everybody, because we're just going the wrong way. We're full of fear in England, we're full of fear in Europe, we're full of fear of Muslim. And as Rania has said, the Muslim faith in the Quran is about peace, it's about mercy, and it's about compassion. So is the faith of Christianity. It's about oneness of all people. And I think our only way forward now is to become one rather than separate. So yes, it has changed, but not in a negative way.
Now, Rania, you yourself wear a hijab.
Yes.
Do you feel that people sometimes feel threatened by somebody like yourself wearing the scarf?
Well, it's interesting that I am kind of a bit in a privileged position that I drive everywhere. But after 7/7, I remember taking public transport. I remember clearly sitting on the DLR and no one sat beside me. And actually, I kind of looked around and I thought, this is odd. Everyone's standing and there's an empty seat beside me. And also after 7/7, my daughter, who at the time used to wear hijab, she was at her friend's, and I remember calling her and saying, if you're coming home, take your scarf off. So I was aware that there will be a hostile reaction. And I was aware that people were looking at me differently. I was very lucky in that I did not face any physical attacks. I know of people who have, people who've been spat at, insults, and that happens on mainly on public transport or on the street. So yes, I am aware of people will look at you differently, but as Anne said, it could be a chance to actually use that time to start talking to people about the faith and about the fact that we are all more
Have
similar.
that open discussion.
Exactly.
Yes.
But I do not, underestimate how fearful it is for young women. They're going to college, to university, to school. They're coming back home on their own, and they are threatened. That is very, very fearful.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've got with me at the moment on Skype, it's Mark Attwood. Mark, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sorry to have kept you.
That's fine. I hope you didn't suffer too much on the M25.
Well, the things will never change with the M25. I have been following your blogs on Facebook and Twitter with real interest, and I was intrigued with your compassion towards the Muslim community following the Paris attacks a couple of weeks ago. You stated that people should have no reason to be afraid from Muslims, and that one should be afraid from basically the actual puppet masters behind all of this. Who are these puppets in your view?
Yeah, 25 years ago I was a trainee pilot in the Royal Air Force in England, and I saw things there that I didn't like, and I resigned before I finished my training. And I've spent the last 25 years just trying to work out exactly who is running this planet. And I'm of the belief that it's not the politicians that we see before us, and I'm also of the belief that the people, what happened in Paris was the same narrative that we had in 7/7, 9/11. It's the same story, and and the reason I wrote the post on Facebook that I think you're alluding to was that, I grew up in the 70s in England, and I was told from a very early age to be terrified of nuclear war, to be terrified of Russia, to be terrified of the IRA. This was a country where we had. It was such a racist country in the 70s. There were signs up saying no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, outside bed and breakfast. And, You know, I'm quarter Irish myself, so I just couldn't understand all this hatred that was around. But it was all out of fear, you know. And my personal journey as a child was that I became very brainwashed. I mean, I was so brainwashed, I used to salute the TV when the national anthem came on when nobody else was in the room, which is pretty, you know, pretty embarrassing to admit now. And I think what I wanted to do when I put that post up after Paris, it was just like, please, for God's sake, don't fall for this again. Yeah. You cannot blame anybody who's of any religion just because of some narrative that you're being told by the television, because that's really what it was. You know, obviously it was a horrible, terrible situation that happened there. But personally, the whole thing smelt fishy to me. I don't personally believe that ISIS is a real organisation. I think it was created by people that have an agenda, and they create these situations in order to achieve that agenda. That's my personal view.
Yes. Well, I mean, many Muslim women wearing the scarf were the subject of abuse on social media, in the streets, the public transport, and within their own communities, as you've just heard from my guests. Do you think that they constantly have to apologise and denounce terrorist attacks just so that they change the public's perception that they are not connected to radical Islam and terrorist groups such as ISIS in any way, shape or form?
I think it's a terrible situation where people have to apologise for being who they are. And really my message is really, as one of your guests, I can't see you, I'm sorry, so I don't know who I'm talking to, but
sorry, yeah.
One of your guests said, you know, we are one consciousness, and this is a time for forgiveness. This is a time for love and taking a step back and being rational. But the opposite's happening. You know, they're rushing in to go and bomb, which is an agenda that has absolutely nothing to do with whatever they said Paris was about. And, you know, nobody should have to apologise. And we should be my message on Facebook was, please, if you're white, you're English, you're European or whatever, and you're not Muslim, please put a message out on social media saying, look, we don't hate you. We're not scared. You know, we know that you're not responsible for this. Yeah. And that's really that's all I wanted to do, really. And I had, I don't know, 11,500 likes, 5,500 shares. I was like, oh my God, I mean, I've only just read your message because I've had so many thousands of messages from people saying,
true. Yes.
Thank you so much for saying this. And I was really taken aback by that because I didn't expect that at all. I just wanted to say to my own friends on Facebook, please take a deep breath here and don't fall for this kind of whipping up of fear and hatred, because it's low vibrational frequency that causes people to lash out. And that's really what I think we should be doing everything we can to avoid right now.
Yes, I mean, that's the question I'm going to sort of ask Rania, and obviously with your presence, Mark. We do not sort of expect Buddhists to apologise as Buddhist extremists massacre Muslims in Burma, or for their human rights sorry, I've just lost that. Just wanted to sort of find out. Yeah. So basically, we don't ask Christians, obviously, to also apologise for their sort of genocide that's happened for Bosnian Muslims. I'm just looking at the sort of the facts because I don't want to sort of say that's something that's out of context. For example, also, we don't sort of expect tens of thousands of civilians that have been killed, ethnically cleansed Muslims throughout Uganda, the Congo and Central African Republic to also apologise. Nor do we ask every white American to apologise for hate crimes that have been committed by sort of self-proclaimed white Christian supremacist groups. All of us instead recognise that religious fanatics perpetuate violent acts for their own deranged reasons, and yet Muslims always feel they have to be apologetic.
But this goes back a little while, and I don't know if Mark remembers, but about 25 years ago, when the USSR was breaking up, about 20 years ago, and Russia, the fear from Russia was abating, the head of NATO at the time, I don't remember his name, said, the new threat to the West is going to come from Islam.
Yes.
So there's already been a discourse which has set up Islam as against the West. There was a famous book about the clash of cultures, the clash of civilizations, and that is the kind of last bastion where the West has to prove itself, and it's going to be against Islam. So we've had a discourse that has been in the mindset of people, politics, media, pundits, intellectuals for a while now, but also that has problematized being a Muslim. And we can't escape the fact that these terrorists, ISIS or others, have done it in the name of Islam. Whoever is behind them, they are claiming it in the name of a religion. So we have to counteract that Not everyone who does a terror act would claim it in the name of a particular faith, but they're doing it in particular in the name of a faith and saying my faith justifies this. So we have to counteract that in terms of actually saying no, they are wrong. But at the same time, it's not about, we shouldn't enter into a competition for victimhood. This is not about victimhood. Everybody is a victim. I don't want to go around saying, oh, you apologize to me because Muslims were killed. No, as Anne said, we are all one. This is an attack on all of us. An attack on Buddhists or Muslims or Christians or people of no faith is an attack on humanity. It is. Yes. Whether you do it through individuals blowing themselves up or airplanes that belong to a country bombing the hell out of a place.
Yes. A question for both, for all of my guests really. Almost 10 years after France has actually banned the girls from wearing veils in state schools in 2004, along with other religious symbols such as the cross and the burqa and so on, the turban, the Muslim headscarf is once again being pushed to the top of the French political debate. Do you think this will actually happen here in the UK? I'll direct this question to you, Anne and Mark.
No. It's a short answer.
Okay, right. What do you think, Mark?
Well, I hope not. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my point. No.
Well, the thing is, I know it is ridiculous and we might think, come on, but it could be that it's, again, how it's problematized. Yeah. So the young woman who was at college, in the further education college, she was an English young woman who then became a Muslim, started wearing a hijab. Her college referred her to anti-radicalization. Because she became a Muslim. Yes. So, we might be able to say it can't happen. Yes. And earlier on, Anne has a scarf with her and put it on her head. And we were talking about before the show, what is the difference between me and her if she puts a scarf on her head? Yeah. But the fact that it's starting to problematize. And, I work at university and the prevent duty puts it on schools, even up to, from early years, schools, further education colleges and universities to look out for signs of radicalization. And people like me, staff members, well, we don't know what these signs are, short of someone walking in with an Uzi machine gun. Yes. So when we start seeing young women who maybe before used to wear a colourful scarf, suddenly wearing a abaya and a black scarf, we think, oh, is she being radicalized? Yes. Am I supposed to report this? And we know that in the summer, up of 500 young people in Britain were reported to anti-radicalization from the age of 5 years old onwards. Yeah. So, we might say, no, it can't happen, but I'm not so sure.
Unfortunately, it is happening. It is happening, but we're not noticing it. It's going unnoticed. And I'm going to ask you this question. More incidents of young hijabis are actually being expelled from schools due to the fact that they are wearing the hijab. And that's in France, parts of America, Canada, because it is becoming, quite a thing now. Now, in some cases, parents of these girls are interrogated by the school administrators on whether whether they're forcing their daughters to actually wear it against their will. So, have you ever encountered situations like this in your teaching experience?
No, I haven't. But in my teaching experience, the girls that I have encountered have made a choice. They're in a position where they have a free mind over whether they wear the hijab. And where I want to go with this is, I think it's another reason to emphasise a difference. Yeah. Because a West Indian can wear a nice jalaba. An English person like myself is in a skirt. Yes. Why shouldn't a Muslim young woman wear a hijab? Yeah. It pulls us apart rather than brings us together. So we should be celebrating our differences, not pulling them apart. So no, I haven't met any young girls, I have to say, who've been forced into wearing it. Yeah. Yeah. They do seem very religious. They do seem very committed.
Committed by heart from it. Yeah. Mark, do you think that Muslims living in Western societies should adapt to local secular norms and let go of their traditional religious beliefs and customs?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think that the human race is wonderful because we're so different, and we should respect each other's views and opinions, and that's what makes the world so interesting. What I really don't like is the homogenization of the human race. They're trying to, I think there's an agenda going on here. I think the whole thing is about divide and conquer, and it's just constantly this friction that needs to go on, creating this fear. So you've got a boogie monster and there's an objective going on, and they keep forcing that through. And the thing is, nobody's connecting the dots because we're so busy fighting amongst each other.
Exactly.
That's right. Yes, Rania, what's your response to this? Because obviously, it's with the increase of sort of hatred in places like France, for example. You notice that a lot of these women that wear the hijab in the West will increase their feel of oppression, which in return will increase their radicalism.
I mean, again, I don't know what you mean by radicalism. What will increase is a sense of not belonging. I think one of the major issues for us now is the sense of not belonging.
Yes.
It's the idea where people say, oh, you can be British or Muslim. No, you can be a British Muslim. We're finding this in the debate around being American in the run-up to the American election. It's like you can be American or Muslim, but there are lots of Americans who are Muslim. So I think it's a false dichotomy. But coming back to the issue, there are other issues connected. So when schools are interfering in whether a girl is being, between brackets, forced or not, it is actually interfering in family life as well. At the end of the day, my parents used to force me to eat my greens.
Yes,
the school has to come and say to my parents,
used to do that.
you're not allowed to do that.
You're a radicalised vegetarian.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Think of that, the radicalised vegetarianism. So there is an agenda in terms of the state interfering far too much in our private lives and problematizing areas where they wish to problematize. And currently, being a Muslim has been made a problem. On many levels, and it's in the rush to avoid harm to children, we are classifying what is normal parental interaction. Parents might make you sleep early or whatever it is. It's just normal. As you grow up, you become a teenager, you become a rebel, you rebel against your parents. Good for you.
Yes.
But the state should really butt out of it.
That's right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for joining us. I'm sorry to have kept you. It's been a great pleasure having you on the show, having me. Sorry. It's just one of these days.
One of these days.
So thank you so much, and it would be lovely if we can sort of have you join us again in future shows.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right. I also actually have another guest of mine. It's Rizwana Malik, but I'm just waiting for her to actually join us in a minute. Going back to the subject of sort of the upbringing of children in societies like in the Western societies and so on. When do actually parents notice their children, or the girls, let's say, have actually started to do things that are maybe radical in terms of, sort of whether it's wearing the hijab or becoming too sort of, extreme, wearing the abaya and so on? Because I have encountered many families where the mother isn't actually wearing the hijab, but the daughter suddenly decides, oh no, I'm going to wear the hijab and even the abaya and even the burqa. Yeah. So what happens there?
Well,
is there something wrong
Dina,
with the balance
my mother
of the family?
still doesn't wear the hijab, and I wear it. So my sister and I wear the hijab, and my mother. So I wouldn't call us radicals for having done it. So clearly, there's always a new generation who want to do something different. I have two daughters, and they've both been teenagers, and I think they're both gave me concerns in different ways. One of them actually was much later on, became very religious, was wearing first the hijab, then the abaya, then the jilbab, and then she stopped listening to music. Now that's not extremist or radical, it is the way she was experiencing her faith. And I just said to her, you're still living under my roof. The one thing I would put a line on is wearing a burqa. I don't believe in covering your face. I actually think that's a completely wrong interpretation of the faith. And actually she came through that, and eventually said, actually I don't want to wear the hijab anymore. And I said, you go ahead, it's your life, it's your religion. The other child, went completely off the rails, as we say. Yes. Now she is as boring, she's 24 going on 37 and very dull and boring. So, teenagers have to do that. And I know, having spoken to Anne before the show, Anne works with a lot of teenagers and has experienced firsthand that kind of rebellious.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You see, probably is rebellion, but against the norm. But I think they're trying to find out who they are.
Yes.
They're trying to experiment with faith, with sex, with food.
Yes, absolutely.
With hair colour.
Yes.
Costume.
Yeah.
They're just teenagers trying to work out who they are, and it comes from separating from the family. Yeah. That's what happens, because up until a point you're like your mum or whoever your significant parent is, and then you try and find your way in life. And hopefully, I mean, as you said, your daughter's found her way into, sounds like quite mainstream.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
some don't. Some go, you know, completely wild
Yeah.
and become characters in the world.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, I just think
Yeah.
they have to have space. Teenagers need space
Yeah.
to find out who they are, and if
Yeah.
they choose to wear the hijab, then they choose to wear it
That's
because
right,
it's
yes.
a process for them.
That's right, yes. Well, I've actually got Rizwana now. I've got Rizwana Malik, who's on Skype, and she's a student at Greenwich University. Hello, Rizwana.
Hi.
Lovely
Hi,
to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Rizwana, you're a Muslim young lady who lives and studies in London and wears a hijab. Did you encounter any racially motivated harassment or abuse while at work or at university or in the streets following the recent attacks in Paris?
To be honest, I've never really had any problems as such, any direct problems, but I have noticed like the odd look and a bit more concern that some people have, and I think it's more of a fear that they have that's
Right.
inside them. It's not so much that they will say it directly unless they have some kind of an issue, but it's more of a worry that they have now, and I think that's quite a natural thing because some people might not be as educated on why women wear the hijab and what it means as a Muslim. No, I haven't experienced any racial attacks or anything like that, but I know friends that have experienced it, and it's quite shocking because they've been wearing the hijab for a very long time, many years in fact, and they go to university like myself, they go to work, they take public transport, never had any problems before, but recently, ever since these attacks took place, they've just been getting, bullied as such, just because of the hijab.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that is scary. We do believe in freedom of expression and belief, but what do you think of the idea that Muslims living in Western societies should adapt to local secular norms and let go their traditional religious beliefs and customs like it is in France? In other words, Western or non-Muslim women who decide to visit or live specifically in Iran or Saudi Arabia, they have to adapt to wear the cover while they are out there.
yeah. I mean, I think in this country, it's really there's a lot more freedom as such. I mean, I'm not as aware as how it is, in different countries. I know that they're more strict on, how to wear the hijab. But in this country, there is a bit more freedom. So you don't necessarily have to wear it. And even if you do wear it, you're more than welcome to wear it. So I wear mine to study. So I've never had a problem with it.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Yeah. I mean, what do you think, ladies? Does this not contradict with the fact that Muslim women should also respect the rules and traditions of the societies that they live in?
Well, there are no rules about what we dress, except the only law is that you can't go stark naked. And that's the only time when you could be arrested. Unless you are on a certain beach in Brighton, and then you're allowed to do that. So the idea that, but the thing is that there is no such thing as norms. 100 years ago, people dressed completely differently in Britain. In Victorian times, women wouldn't even show their ankles. And when they did, it was quite a scandal.
Right.
So these are aspects of culture that are not set in stone, and they are movable. They change.
Yes.
And so you can't actually use them again to make a problem, to problematize. The problem with the hijab is that it's been seen as a sign.
Yes.
And as Rizwana said, nobody stops to ask women, and each woman has a different reason for wearing it, why they're wearing it, whether it's something they wear it for fashion, because a lot of young women, and I've taught a lot of them, wear it because all the other young women are wearing it and they want to be part of the group.
Yes.
Others may wear it for religious reasons, others wear it because their mum did or didn't.
A culture, tradition,
or maybe
yes.
they are kind of rebelling against the mother who didn't wear it, so they're wearing it. So it's not, we are using it as a group sign, and it's not. And it's because it's visible. So as Rizwana and Anne both said, there is a fear. There's a fear, and Mark said the same thing, there's a fear that's being stoked. And when you are afraid, you're going to look for what you're afraid from. And a woman wearing a headscarf is absolutely like a red flag. You and I could go out, Dina, and people might focus on me. I don't know what your faith is, it's funny enough. But let's say you are a Muslim.
Yes.
We would go out, and you could be a Muslim, but no one will have an idea. You'd be safe. Although they're scared of Islam, they're not really scared of a piece of material. But they're scared of Islam. They're scared of what the government telling them or the media telling them to be scared of. So I might get abuse and attack. and you'd be seen as one of us, although we might share exactly the same faith,
Yes.
do the same prayers,
Yes.
fast in Ramadan, have the same values.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. We need to address the fear.
The fear, that's right. I actually also have on the phone, actually, I'd like to welcome in the show Zeyneb Nejm. Zeyneb is a final year medical student who proudly wears the hijab at university and works despite the current incidents that hijabi women are facing in the UK. So welcome to the show, Zeyneb.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you very much.
Zeyneb, what made you decide to wear the hijab at a time when girls, once they reach university, they like to enjoy university life and what it entails? What made you decide to wear the hijab?
So for me, it very much was a sort of a physical representation of my faith, and I really wanted to, have that as a sign that I was a Muslim woman, that I could be easily identified as a practicing Muslim woman. So that's what really motivated me to start wearing it. And although, it is very, very difficult, I don't think it's a decision that anyone should take lightly. It's something that I don't regret at all. It's one of the best decisions I've made. So.
Right. Did your parents have any influence on your decision to wear it?
Actually, ironically, I think a lot of people have the impression that, many girls in the West are sort of pressured by their parents and it comes from the parents. But when I told my parents that I wanted to start wearing hijab, they actually reacted quite negatively. And I know I've been wearing it for 4 years now, and every time something like this happens, where there is a rise in attacks against Muslim women, they again get very scared and worried, which is completely understandable, but it's just very sad that they have to feel that way for something that, shouldn't be causing me problems at all.
Yeah, yeah. Did you actually encounter any racially sort of motivated harassment or abuse while at work or out in the streets following the recent attacks in Paris from your own sort of experience?
I've been quite lucky because I've never really experienced any problems. People have been, quite pleasant with me. However, I am close with a lot of girls at university who have experienced sort of violence on public transport, who've had, verbal abuse thrown at them and that sort of thing. So it's definitely a reality for us now.
Yeah. Rizwana, is women's hijab a symbol of oppression or liberation, in your opinion? I just wanted to ask you this one.
It's more of an identity. I don't think it represents oppression as such. It's more of an identity. So for me, hijab is my identity. It represents who I am as a person. And I try to explain that as much as I can for people who do ask me.
Yes.
So it's more of an identity for me. It's not so much as something that I feel is restricting me in any way. If anything, it gives me more freedom to express myself.
Yes, yeah. Anna, I wanted to ask you this question. The hijab can make a political firestorm or an invitation to tolerance and mutual respect. Which one is it following recent events, in your opinion, is it?
Well, when you asked me my first question, did I change? My answer was yes, in the positive, and I became a lot more sympathetic.
Yeah.
And I did want to add, however,
right,
for other people who have already gone down the road of hate and fear and isolating, I think it has changed opinion. And I think what it is it was so atrocious what happened in Paris and so near to our hearts that people needed somewhere to put their grief, their hate, their despair. And there's a hijab wearer, let's put it there.
Yeah.
Because what else do you do with it? If you really have to be quite an evolved human being to err on the side of compassion and understanding. And I think when you have an atrocity like this, like what's been happening all over the world, let's face it, not just Paris,
yes, right.
You either buy into the kind of psychosis of hate and despair, or you go, I need to use this to change something.
Yeah.
And my true belief is that we've all got to actually come to terms with ourselves, because if you don't feel compassion for yourself as a human being, you will not feel it for another person. So my real feeling now is that if we're going to change anything, we have to address why we hate. And where that comes from within us, because we've got light and shade, And in answer to your question, if you've not evolved and worked through your own stuff, you are going to use targets and symbols and symbolism to put it somewhere, rather than you take responsibility for your own feelings. Has that answered the question?
Yes, it has. Yes, fully. Thank you. Now, I do have a question that I'd like all four of you to answer me, please. I'll start with you, Zeyneb. How would you feel if the British government set up new laws limiting professions in which headscarves can be worn, but excluding doctors and teachers? Would you leave and sacrifice your job for the sake of keeping the hijab on, or would you take it off?
I think this sort of becomes a wider debate because, as you mentioned earlier, there are countries in which women, by law are forced to wear it. And I think I don't, support that at all. I think what we need to understand is that women should always be free to dress however they feel, whatever their motivation for that is. So I think if there was talk of such a law being passed, I think not only Muslim women, but many non-Muslim women, who support the rights of women to dress freely and do whatever they like, would have a problem with that. And I think I would have to very seriously consider, the type of society that we are then turning into, if that's something that we feel we can do.
Yeah. What about you, Rizwana? What's your response to my question, please?
If that was to happen, I'd like to find out the reasons why it would take place. What is the problem with wearing a hijab and going into a profession? Personally, I wouldn't take off my hijab for anything or for anyone. I'd keep it on no matter what. So, no, I wouldn't agree with it. I would find it really difficult to understand. And that's just discrimination straight up, isn't it? So, yeah.
Well, what if it was you're losing your job, or you're losing your, let's say, university degree? What would happen then?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. It's really difficult. It would question a lot of things. It would question my morals, my beliefs, my religion, and it would really put things to the test. So, I would find that really difficult to sort of think about what I'd want to do. I'd have to weigh up whether it would be worth me taking my hijab off for a profession.
Right. Okay. What about you, Rania?
I would start a revolution. Yeah, I would get all my friends, Muslims and non-Muslims, males and females, to wear hijab to work, and then let them arrest us all. And we don't start enough revolutions.
Yes.
I certainly would start a revolution. No, I wouldn't accept it. I would fight against it.
You would fight against it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because again, like Rizwana and Zeynep, I believe in the rights of women and men. Actually, to dress as they wish, whether it is in line with religion or with their identity or whatever they want. I would actually fight it, and I know that I will have a lot of my friends who will be fighting with me.
But you remember, when it's a law that's been actually, put down by the government. Everybody needs to abide by these laws.
No, we have laws in the country. We have changed. There used to be a law, 30 years ago, meaning that if you were homosexual, it was illegal to have a homosexual act. We had laws which barred women from voting. We've just been celebrating a centenary of the suffragettes, and you can fight against these laws, and we will fight against these laws. We will fight to maintain the freedom and liberty that are important to all of us as British citizens.
So would that mean that we need to fight for those that are in Saudi Arabia then?
We're talking about Britain.
The women in Saudi Arabia that get
it's their role to fight their wars.
Yeah. Or Iran, for example, the women in Iran.
Yeah, but the women of Iran are more capable than you and me, trust me. It's for them to fight, and a lot of them have been fighting. We can't, take on the white person's burden and decide to go and change the world, either by, fighting on their behalf or fighting them and dropping bombs on them. We really should butt out and sort out our
But
own
what
house.
about the Western women here we're talking about? So maybe in your case, Anne, being a Westerner, going out there, living in Iran and Saudi Arabia, abiding by their rules and guidelines and wearing the hijab, not even hijab actually, the whole abaya look, the burqa and abaya. What?
If that was the deal,
yeah,
then I would do it. But it's not the deal for me in England or in Britain. So in answer to your question for Britain, as you rightly pointed out, there is a freedom, isn't there, that we must protect.
Absolutely.
I mean, it would be the same as them saying, which I believe is being used as an argument before, you can't wear the cross. You must take your cross off if you're a Christian.
Yeah.
You know, you can't wear your hijab.
You did mention that about how, you know, parts of France.
But
where
can I butt in here a little bit? Because unfortunately the question implies that as a Muslim I'm responsible for what they do in Iran and Saudi. I am not. They are independent countries. If they want to claim it in the name of faith, I will argue with them until, you know, the cows come home that they are wrong. Because faith is about personal choice, conscious choice. La ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in our religion. That's in the heart of the Quran. I don't care what Saudi, Iran or any other country have as a law. They are going against Islam. And there's no point, you know, I as a British Muslim, I am not responsible for what they do in Iran and Saudi, and as a Muslim I would fight against their interpretation of the faith as well.
Right.
But I think in the Western world, and I do say Britain because that's where I've lived my whole life really, although I've travelled but not lived anywhere for any length of time, we do try and protect our freedoms. You know, women fought hard, the suffragettes is a point in case where we're not oppressed anymore. And so I don't think if anyone tried to impose a code of dress, I think there'd be an uprising from men and women.
Absolutely.
You know, because if you start with one person, and you've got to start with everybody. You know, we could find so many things offensive. And I would say one thing, if you can't communicate because of what you're wearing, there's a problem. And you did mention teachers and doctors.
With the face cover.
But we're all human beings and we do read faces and we do need to understand. And I think sometimes if you're covered, there's a fear again because you can't read the person, not because of what it means, but personally you've already created a boundary where you can't read, and we do read very much from movement and facial expression. So if there was a communication problem, then maybe the government would have a reason for wanting to ban it. But why would they want to?
But it's not also banning it. I taught teachers for a decade, and I was the head of department for teacher training. And I always said, if a Muslim woman came to me wearing a burqa, I want to become a teacher, I would require her to take it off. And I mean by that the face cover. Simply because I don't think you can be a good teacher and not use all what you have to communicate with your students. And that's a real barrier to communication with students. And I don't need the government to tell me that.
Well, Rizwana, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you. And hopefully maybe we can have you be our guest in future.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rizwana. Thank you. Zeyneb, just wanted to ask you this question before we let you go. What would you say to women that wore the hijab but decided to take it off in fear of their family's safety and their safety?
I know quite a lot of girls that have been in this position, so it's quite a personal question for me. And I would absolutely support those women and whatever they required. You know, it's a very valid fear to have. There are women who have been, you know, pushed in front of trains on tracks and suffered many other types of violence. So I think if that's something that you're fearful of and, you know, your personal safety is coming into question and you just simply don't feel safe being out, I would support any woman, you know, with her choice to remove hijab, and I would definitely sort of fight against anyone who tried to, you know, judge her or make her feel bad for it, because I think, as you know, as has come up a lot today, the hijab is a very personal thing, and it's something you can only really wear if you're confident with it and you're comfortable with it yourself. So I would definitely, you know, support those women, and I think we would then have to question as a society why so many women do feel vulnerable in this way and what we can do to help them.
Well, Zeyneb Najm, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been a real pleasure having you, and good luck with your career.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Right, Rania, this is something I read in the article. It's basically about the chairman of the Council of Mosques and Imams. He's advised Muslim women to remove their headscarves to avoid faith hate attacks. And it's Dr. Zaki Badawi said that in the current climate, the hijab might invite harm, whereas they had been designed to identify women as Muslim and thus protect them from molestation. What do you think of his advice?
Actually, it is useful advice, because if we go to the Quran and where it says to the Muslim women to cover themselves so they may be recognized and avoid molestation, we are in a position where actually by identifying yourself as a Muslim woman, you are inviting
them.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's you inviting.
Yeah,
I don't want to say it's
no,
not.
but
yeah, but
in a way,
it is actually valid advice.
Yes.
And I understand that it is permissible, put it this way, for a woman who wishes, permissible for a woman to wear whatever she wants anyway, but if she feels that actually I don't want to attract attention to me, and I really want to avoid it, that's fine. At the end of but also, if a woman wants to say, just a minute, I'm a citizen like everybody else, I have a right to wear whatever I want, and I have a right to be protected from harm.
Yeah.
Then of course I support her as well. So actually, both positions is absolutely valid.
Yeah.
What we have to do is support both sets of women, those who wish to take it off, wear it, never wear it in the first place, wear it one day, take it off the other day. It is their choice. We have to stop connecting it with the whole group and seeing it as just an item of clothing.
Well, finally, just one more question for you, Anne.
Yeah.
Do you think that the British public sympathises with what the Muslim community is going through following the current climate in the Middle East? Generally speaking, obviously, you do sympathise, but generally speaking, from what we hear, read in the media and the social media and in newspapers and stuff.
Right. I think the media would have us all on a hate trail.
Yeah.
To be really honest. But I think they've underestimated the integrity of the British public. If you're in a racial place of prejudice and hate, you will find anything to fly that flag. So in answer to that question, anyone who's on that trip already, yes, it will increase. Yeah. But to be really honest, I think the more hate bashing there is, the more people are coming out and saying this isn't the way forward.
Yeah.
It's more about conciliation, thank you. And sorry, I've lost my track there.
Yeah, with the British public and the media and the newspapers.
Yes, I think the media would like you to think we all hate Muslims. Sorry, Rania.
That's all right.
No disrespect, because I don't hate you. I rather like you, actually. Good. But it's not true. There are many, many people who don't want this, who want something new in our life. And really, I think, I know it sounds a bit new agey, but there are people now who want a new spiritual ethos throughout the whole land. It's not working. We get it. It's not working. Whoever these homogenous people are that they want us all to be like, it's not working. And I think if you've got any head on your shoulders and any feeling that connects with your head, you're going to say, hang on a minute, I don't want to do this. It doesn't make me feel good. It's not who I am as a human being. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's fully. Thank you so much. I mean,
You're welcome.
We can go for hours, discussing this topic because it's a very interesting one. But unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show today. So thank you so much, and Muddiman, for coming and joining us today, and for Rania Hafez, and for all our guests. It's been a pleasure to have everyone on the show today. It is right to say that Muslim females should decide for themselves whether they wish to wear the hijab or discard it. It is up to the individual to determine what poses them a threat to their personal safety and act accordingly. It is also true to say that Muslims living in Western societies should adapt to local secular norms and let go of their traditional religious beliefs and customs, the same like Western and non-Muslim women are forced to wear the hijab and long dresses to cover themselves when they visit Saudi Arabia or Iran. However, we should never prejudice an individual on the basis of what they wear, their religion, or their colour. Nobody should have to forego basic human rights to practice their religion as they see fit, as long as it does not infringe on others' humans' rights. Our focus should be on educating people, not working around them. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye. Inshallah.